All right, in the last video, we set up our characters so that we can begin the process of animating them. In this video, we're going to go ahead and create two animations. So we're going to create an idle animation like this. And we're also going to create a run animation or a walk animation that's like this. So something like that. All right, and so we have our EJ character here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this animator for now. And let's see. This is our default pose. All right, I'm going to go ahead and we'll start from, even though we created the idle animation last class, we're going to start with a fresh. We'll start fresh with creating the anims folder again and stuff. All right, so inside of our EJ folder here, right click, create a folder and just call it anims. And go ahead and select the EJ container here and click on create. And inside of the CSS, art, non-playable character EJ folder, anims, go ahead and create a new animation and call it idle. And what we want to do is click these three little dots here and make sure show sample rate is on. And it says samples are 60. We want our animation to be 24 frames a second. Now for our idle, go ahead and click on this little record button. This will auto key it. We want to key in certain aspects. So for example, for an idle state, I'm going to go ahead and bring this torso down just a little bit. What you'll notice is as I move these elements around, it'll set a keyframe here. So now we're on keyframe 0. And what I'm going to be keying inside of here is really this torso and the head. And that's really it for my idle. So what I want this to do is to be a looping animation. So I have to make sure that frame 0 and frame 24 are essentially the same. So I'm going to go to I'm going to click on this top key here, which will select all of the keys below. And I'm going to hit Control C to copy. And I'm going to go all the way to frame 24. And I'm going to hit Control V to paste it. And now in the middle on 12, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift this up just a little bit. And when I press play now, you can see we have this up and down like breathing animation. We could, if we wanted to add a little bit more, I can select this and I can hit R or select scale from over here. And I can just scale this up just a tad bit, like 1 frame. And that really gives the impression that our character is breathing. Now, the reason why there's some popping is because my first frame and my last frame do not seem to be in sync. So I'm going to select this again, hit Control C, go to frame 24, select this and hit Control V, and really just make sure that it's looping. And you're going to see that a lot. If you notice any popping, it's really because your front and last frame are not looping. The next thing I want to do is I want to go in about 12 frames in. So that's, or about 6 frames in between 0 and 12. And I want to grab this head. I want to just move it down a little bit. Oops, let's make sure we're on 6. I want to move this down a little bit here. And let's make sure auto key is on. So just moving that down a little bit. So here's 0, here's 6. Move that down a little bit. And then let's make sure though that our head is the same on 0, 24, or 12 and 24. So there we go. So we get a little bit of down movement on 6, and then as our torso is going up, let's watch this really quick. Why is my torso not moving now? I think I wrote over everything. So let's just go back to here. 12, raise this up a little bit. Hit R to scale that up just a little bit. There we go. Yeah, it can be finicky. Okay, so my head goes down on 6. Let's move that down a little bit here. And we're going to have it squash out just a tad bit. And then we're going to go the halfway point between 12 and 24, which is essentially 18. And I'm going to bring my head in just a little bit, and I'm going to stretch it out. And let's see how that looks. And again, we're getting some popping, so I'm just going to select my head here. Click on that, hit Control C, go to 24, hit Control V to paste that, and we shouldn't get that popping anymore. Why are you not looping right? Oh, it looks like, here's my head. copy, paste. It could be my computer isn't copying and pasting right. There we go. We got some good stuff going on. Nice loop. You can see our head is kind of stretching. And if it's if you do it too much, it looks nice and cartoony here. But if you over exaggerate, it looks way too cartoony. If you do it on a realistic one, like if you're trying to do this on a realism, you don't want to do something like a lot of the squash and stretch. It'll just look fake. All right, so now we have if we look inside of our anims folder, we now have an animation here called idle. And we also have something called an animator, which is EJ container. And it automatically adds that animator controller onto our model. Don't worry too much about this. We'll get into what this controller is later. Let's just go ahead and work on our walk cycle. So I'm going to create a new clip here, and I'm just going to name this walk. And you'll see that it reset back the default position. There's no animation here, but if I want to, I can click on idle here and I can watch this. Now the same thing as before. I don't want to be at 60 frames per second. I just want to be at 24. And so what I'm going to do is just set the initial position, and this is going to take some tweaking. So let's turn on auto key here. Let's set the initial position of this leg here. Maybe something like this. We're going to need to move and rotate quite a bit as we move this just so it looks right. Let's kind of position this. This arm needs to go forward because the opposite arm moves with the opposite leg. Something like that. Let's move this arm back. And try to exaggerate this just a little bit. So we got something like this. Let's make sure these are lined up. Otherwise it could look weird. And then let's go ahead and stretch this out just a little bit here. Bring this forward. And I'm just going to select this whole puppet, and including the head. Let's actually just give the head a little bit of some movement here. All right, now I'm going to grab all of this, hit Control-C, go all the way to frame 24, and paste that. Now on frame 12, we're going to invert this. So let's move this arm back and down. Let's move this arm forward, like that. Let's move this leg forward and this leg back. Now when we watch this, we get some little bit of walking going on. Like we can have we're going to use our waypoint system to pace this character back and forth. And then what we can do for head movement is let's go to frame 6 and just kind of have our character look up. And then on frame 18, have our character look down. And we got a little bit of a head bobble walk cycle going. Let's make sure also that our head is the same on 6 and 24. So we get a little bit smoother movement like that. So not bad. We got our walk. If we want to do a run, we need to like break these knees a little bit more. Like add another. We'd have to go into Photoshop and cut this leg, and then we'd have like same thing. Like you would cut this arm and at the elbow joint, and you'd have to create almost like a secondary like bend in the elbow. But you know, as a first pass, looks pretty good. And that's it for animation.